Hi, I'm Suki. Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to me use myself to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Hello and welcome to Getting Psychic. I'm your host, Suki, and I'm here today with Gracie Johnson. Gracie is an attorney who specializes in immigration law. Gracie lives in Los Angeles, California, and her office, Gracie Johnson Law, is in Compton. Now, you may find it surprising that I'm sitting down with an immigration attorney on my spiritual podcast, but there's a lot here for us. As a reminder, spiritual simply means non-physical, or relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. So for me, morals, ethics, justice, and equity all fall under my blanket of spirituality. And I wanted to bring to you an individual who fights for the human spirit every single day. Welcome, Gracie.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course, my pleasure.
Okay. This interview was delayed yesterday because you got a call from ICE and you
Yes,
needed to send them something for a detained client.
yes,
Please tell us a little bit about your career path and what you do day to day, especially these days.
sure. Career path wise, I became a licensed attorney in 2011. And of course, that was after college, undergrad, and law school and the bar exam. So I became a licensed attorney in 2011. And initially, I thought I wanted to become a criminal defense attorney. And so I tried really hard for a few years to join the public defender's office, basically. But I kept getting denials and just redirected to other paths, other areas of law. And then my first job, we did a little bit of everything, and which included immigration. And so I just kept working. It was also during a recession, so it was kind of like if you have a job, you're grateful for whatever type of work you're getting. And so eventually I joined a law firm where they primarily handled immigration cases and a little bit of criminal defense. And so when I joined that, initially I thought immigration was not where it was at. I didn't like it. I felt like, oh, this is so unorganized. It's the federal government. They don't know what's going on. The laws are really archaic. But as it would have it, I started practicing a lot more immigration, handling more immigration cases, and then I just kind of fell in love with it. And now it's the primary area of practice that I have. I am a certified immigration law specialist here in the state of California, which is a special designation to California attorneys who have been practicing for a certain number of years and have handled a specific area of law also for a certain number of years. And so, what that means as an immigration attorney, my day to day kind of depends on the administration that's in power. But right now, under this administration, it basically involves a lot of very urgent matters. Every day feels like it's an emergency room type of scenario. Someone calls, they say my relative was detained, and they need help. And so, generally, in those types of cases, because of the nature of the detention, obviously you need to act fast as an attorney. If you need to file a motion or request a bond or a parole request, which is like a special type of request to be released on your own recognizance in immigration. Basically, everything is hurry, 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 emergency, emergency. This needed to be done yesterday. And so that involves also a lot of working with government officials, including ICE officers, government attorneys. And so trying to convey to them the urgency of this one specific case, which is, like my client, for example. It can be rewarding, it can be frustrating, it can be very sad at times. And even now, I feel a little bit emotional.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but overall, it is very, like I said, rewarding, if you when you're able to help someone. At least what happens is a lot of clients, they put their fears, their concerns, their stress, they kind of put it on their attorney, and you receive that, and you try to remain professional and keep that boundary there as well. But yeah, there's a lot of pain there. It's not just the immigration status part of it. A lot of it comes with a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of like family history of trauma. And so, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like it can be really intense. How is your spirituality relevant in your practice?
Well, I think it's super relevant. I see the interplay between spirituality and like the practical, 3D stuff happen every day. When I'm in client consultations or when I'm in court, I feel it like energy, like an exchange of energy between the individuals that I meet, regardless of who they are. And I kind of sense, if they're like their mood or their anxiety or their fears, whatever's going on, that's how I sense it. And to me, it's very apparent. It's very clear. There are even times when, I leave or I'm finished with whoever I'm working with. And then I'm kind of left with that sense, like whatever they were going through. And I feel like I kind of have to shake it off, or have to like take a few moments to myself to like regroup and kind of get out of whatever weird or energetic type of headspace they were in. So yeah, I see it interplay all the time, no matter where I go for work. It always happens without fail.
Yeah. It's funny because it's often presented like spirituality or psychic pursuits or spiritual endeavors are presented as if they are separate from this physical existence. And I absolutely believe that is not true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like it's part of our jobs here to sort of incorporate them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You're being exposed to really intense situations and emotions. So, how do you think it helps?
I think it helps first in the sense that it helps me identify, it helps me understand what's going on. It's not just, a person who is being rude or, whatever is going on in their lives. It helps me identify that there's like underlying stuff here that is to be honest is not just about whatever tears they're showing or whatever anger they're expressing, but there's more behind that. And there's like so much more. It's like an ocean, of history going on there. So that's the first way that it helps me, to kind of see behind the curtain. The second way I would say it helps me is to kind of like by understand feeling like I understand what's going on behind the scenes. I'm able to, I guess in a way to say like I'm able to better navigate this person or help them even navigate, their feelings or their emotions or their thoughts or what is going on. It definitely helps me with that. And then I would say it also helps me just personally kind of separate myself, because there has to be a separation at some point. I can't just take it all on. And so it helps me kind of separate that. And like, I always imagine putting myself in my special tube of light that I always talk to you about and just kind of cleanse myself of whatever was going on there. Let's wash that. Let's clean it. Let's send some positive energy to that person, and hope in hopes that it helps them as well in their journey. And then that allows me to do my job and to continue doing it over and over again.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
should add a free light tube cleansing to your service list.
Yes.
Whether you know it or not. You're going
Yeah.
in the Gracie Johnson Law light tube.
Yeah.
So, so do you have any psychic, surreal, or paranormal stories from childhood that you remember?
Yeah, I feel like I have a ton. There's so many.
Really?
Yeah, my family is Peruvian, and There is a lot like shamanism, like esoteric, all that is very much part of the culture, along with the Catholicism. And so it's like a very interesting, combination. I think it's very common in a lot of, Latino communities. But yeah, I just remember like sitting at my grandmother's bedside with my mom and my aunts, and they would just talk about different things, and sometimes they were kind of like, I guess you could say like ghost stories or, different types of like scary stories. And it would just fascinate me because it was, it was just fascinating to hear, what they interpreted that was going on at the time. As a child, I think, because I was a child, I think I was like 7, but I'm pretty sure I saw a UFO. I don't know if it was in a dream, but I could have sworn like we were coming back home. It was late at night, and I woke up in the car and I looked and I saw what I thought was like a UFO, the
Mm-hmm.
classic like silver plate looking thing. And then I closed my eyes, opened them back up, it was gone. There was this time I was at this ship called the Queen Mary in Long Beach here in California. And that place is like a known haunted spot. So many different, paranormal forms of paranormal activity going on there. And I remember we would visit that, whenever someone would come into town, that's where we would take them.
Oh my God. You want to go to the scary ship?
Exactly. We would visit that. And I recall it was a couple of times where I was left, for some reason, I was left by myself. Like my parents kind of walked away
Oh
from
my
me for a few
God.
seconds. And I remember like seeing someone kind of peek around in a doorway, and I looked at them, and I
No.
thought they were someone I knew. And when I walked out to look for them, there was no one there.
Nope.
Stuff like that.
No thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up with a lot of this type of stuff. So to me, it's nothing new.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are you seeing play out in your hometown in regard to ICE raids and injustices towards non white immigrants?
Yeah. Well, first, it's unclear who exactly is carrying out the raids, because there is this, when law enforcement conducts their activities, that, obviously that's their job. But there are certain parameters that they work with, and those parameters are guided by the law, right? The Constitution, local rules, state rules, federal rules, etc. And so the first issue that we're seeing is we're not exactly sure who is going into the communities and conducting these raids, primarily because their face is covered up. There's no consistency in uniforms. There's not even consistency in the manner that things are carried out. Law enforcement, they have parameters, and they have like community guidelines, I guess, so to say, that allow them to carry out their job in a way that is both humane, that is legal, and that completes, whatever their job is to do. So that's the first thing. Number two, of course, the communities that they're targeting, of course, are communities where there are primarily people of color who reside in those communities. And so you can see a lot of the difference, for example, earlier this year here in California, when the fires were raging through parts of Southern California, a lot of the communities that were mentioned there were very affluent communities, right? Now, turn that around, ICE raids, the communities that are being mentioned are the less affluent communities where people of color primarily reside. And so that alone just kind of gives you an idea on who's being targeted. There's a lot of profiling, going on. So for example, if I'm a police officer and I want to make an arrest, or a nice officer, right? There are things that I need to do in order to justify my arrest. One of them is not to kind of go based on my gut, right? I have to have like a reasonable cause or a reasonable suspicion. I can't just go up to someone that looks a certain way and say, "Hey, do you have papers?" You know. And so a lot of that is what is seems to be going on, because the raids are just seem arbitrary. You're going into places, or particularly like businesses, where there are people, primarily people of color, who work there, like, I guess, car washes, day laborers at Home Depot, restaurants. They're going in the back of the house of the restaurant to look to see if people who work there have status. So, and these are not guided by any particular, there's no reasonable cause. At least none are being articulated, right? If you're going in to look for someone, then say that. We had someone, we were looking for someone who was already ordered deported at some point, and we were going in to collect them to complete, the deportation or the removal. But none of that is being said. There's no information. And although law enforcement isn't expected to share every detail of their investigative procedures, I think that, and sharing some of it, would help shed some light and put some order into what otherwise seems to be an arbitrary assault on people of color. Yeah.
What is something that you wish more people understood about what's happening in our country right now?
I think just that there's a lot of misinformation, which leads to a lot of separation between communities, a lot of the other type of mentality, like, that's them, this is affecting them, they came in here illegally, or they should have fixed their papers when they had a chance, or we did it legally. There's a lot of that separation. But the reality is that it's really not that separate. Even individuals who claim to have done things the right way, there is a level of how should I say it? Like, there is no right way unless you literally just came into the U.S. as a green card holder, or you acquired your citizenship through your parents, and so you weren't born here, but you acquired it through your parents. So that, I guess, that would be like the right way. But ultimately, the United States is a country founded on immigrants. Even the very first white settlers that came to the U.S. were immigrants.
Yeah, I mean,
so
human evolution
this whole notion
is a
of the
story of
other
migration.
was
Would
very,
we
to me,
be
it's
better off
disturbing.
if we all understood
It's a
that and your
little
job wasn't necessary?
ignorant in the sense that, do we not know our own history? And then, of course, it goes into other areas. It's not just the immigration issue, it's other areas, and it just creates a lot of divide and ultimately a lot of pain, right? Because whoever's in power will apply that mentality to whoever is not in power, and it causes pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I don't know if my
Yeah.
job wouldn't be necessary.
It would be less light tubes for you.
But it would at least make it so that my job is not based on pain and desperation and hurt, right? It would be based on, this is a family, they deserve to remain together, let's apply these rules that help them stay together. I think that would be a better approach versus like separating people, tearing them apart, thrusting them into these really crazy detention centers. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right, so can you tell us a little bit more about your day-to-day experiences or your clients' experiences currently?
Recently, there have been a lot of individuals who have been detained by ICE, and so they're currently being held in multiple locations throughout here in Southern California, and also, throughout the United States. And so, a lot of times, I'm speaking to their relatives. I am sometimes going out to visit them at the detention center. And sometimes I am going to the immigration courts as well to represent them in front of an immigration judge. Sometimes clients have interviews with immigration services, which is a different branch of immigration, like overall. And then there's also a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. It's not all just presentation, like with clients or with judges or ICE officers. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in terms of a lot of reading like the law, There's also a lot of writing that goes on. For example, I'm writing briefs explaining someone's eligibility for certain forms of relief that could potentially help them to avoid deportation. I am also preparing a lot of applications, family petitions, or applications for work permits, or applications for green cards. And there is a lot of storytelling that goes on because what I'm dealing with is individuals' stories of why they came to the United States, why they should be allowed to remain in the United States. And so invariably that always involves stories about their families, about their history, about what happened in their home countries, and what has gone on here in the United States since they have arrived. And so for me, I find that part of it very enjoyable to learn about people, different cultures, to learn about what's gone on in their families, different, both positive and negative. I will say that there is a lot of trauma that has gone on. I don't think that's unique to the immigrant experience. And it's definitely something that I feel very privileged to be able to receive these stories from individuals and serve as their sounding board, as their confidant, as their defender, as their advocate. It is a big privilege for me personally to be able to be on the other end of their stories.
Do you have stories specifically about where people are getting detained, and have you had successes recently?
I am based here in the greater Los Angeles area. And so a lot of the individuals that get detained here are being held downtown Los Angeles at the federal building. There is an ICE detention slash holding center down there. It's in a basement under a federal building. It's not adequately set up to actually house people long term. It's more meant to be kind of like a staging area to then move them somewhere else. But in light of a lot of the raids that are going on, more people are being picked up from the street. And so that is the primary place where they go first, downtown LA at that federal building. And then a few days later, they generally are being either removed from the United States or they are being moved to other locations. Primarily, right now, it seems like people are being moved to this place called the Adelanto Detention Center. It is a detention center that is operated by a private for-profit agency that basically they're in the business of detaining people. And they have contracts with the federal government, and this place is very far. It's from Los Angeles. I would say it's almost a 2-hour drive. That creates very unique challenges that go into representing these individuals. For an attorney, having to drive out 2 hours, 2 hours back, going to court, that makes it very difficult. And a lot of times, the attorneys that represent individuals who are in Adelanto are nonprofit, or it's very low bono type of work, and so we're not making millions of dollars. But at the same time, there's a lot of effort that has to go into that driving, going out there. It's out in the boonies, basically, out in the boonies, and it's
Mhm.
very hard to get out there. It also poses challenges to the families of the detainees who want to see their relatives. Not everyone has a car that can drive out there 2 hours each way. Sometimes the families also are mixed status. Mixed status means that some individuals in the family have lawful status and some do not. And so when you have a family that is mixed status, you have a challenge there because everyone might want to go see their relative that's been detained, but not everyone in the family feels safe to go see them because basically they're walking into an immigration detention center. And so it's very challenging. These efforts have been ramped up, of course, during this administration. It seems like previous administrations, the goal was to remove individuals that had criminal history, particularly serious criminal history. That was the stated goal under this administration. However, they've redefined what a criminal is, and essentially anyone here without status is a criminal, is how they see it, which is not true.
Mostly brown?
Yes, of course, mostly brown. We don't see there are millions of undocumented people in the United States that aren't people of color.
That are not targeted right
Right,
now.
exactly. And so it is just very telling, the kind of bait and switch that has gone on. And one thing I always like to remind people is that being undocumented inside of the United States is actually not a crime. Entering illegally is something that you could be prosecuted for federally, but that's something that happens at the border. Inside the US, existing in the US without status is not, there's no penal code, there's no federal code, there's nothing that says you have committed a crime if you do that. And that's why immigration laws are civil in nature versus criminal in nature. So basically, this redefinition of what a criminal is causing a lot of harm. It's arbitrary. It's ultimately something that is being promoted by racist beliefs that if you don't have papers or documents, then you need to go. You don't deserve to be here. You shouldn't even have a chance, to try to stay, even though you've worked in this country, you've contributed to Social Security, to taxes, to your family. A lot of the clients I have, their children who were born here, their children are people that have gone to college, that have wonderful careers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, accountants, creative people. I mean, the list is unending. But because of the mere fact that they don't have status, they're singled out. And basically it's like it doesn't matter what good you've done, you're here illegally. And for that reason you have to go. And that's just very sad.
It's painful.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about your perspective as a queer Latina?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Pleasure. Your work in immigration law is all about borders and belonging. How has your own perspective, shaped by your identity and experiences, influenced how you think about who gets to belong? And the idea that, in a deeper sense, again, none of us are truly outsiders.
It's helped me understand that there is a lot that people don't say outwardly, that people hold back. Growing up queer and not necessarily being so out was something that I had to, kind of fight with, growing up. And then as I got older, of course, it's the guards went down, and then eventually it's like I am who I am. That exists with everyone. It doesn't matter their immigration status. It doesn't matter what country they're from. It's just part of. I think it's part of being human. Queerness or your sexual orientation or other things. Your religion or your spirituality or whatever it is. It's like it's all included. We all share these things. No one is exempt from it. And so in my approach to like my practice, for example, I try to adhere to that. I try not to be surprised by things that people tell me about themselves. And I just try to be understanding and ultimately try to show them like, look, you're not alone. Obviously there are boundaries as well. As an attorney, you want to maintain that professionalism with your client, but there are ways that you can tell your client you're not alone while at the same time, maintaining that ability to help them in a professional way.
Can we touch on advice for balance when you're a spiritual person wanting to protect your energy?
Yeah. Balance and protecting energy. That's big for me personally. I am very aware of it on a daily basis because I feel like, there are so many things that we encounter and they're not necessarily the best, energies that go around. I'm not saying that anyone in particular is bad, but with a lot of the stuff that goes on, like it just creates these more negative type of energies. And so personally, I think by being aware of that, I'm kind of protecting myself. I also try my best to like separate, when I'm finished working with someone or being at a place or speaking to a nice officer, whatever it is, I try to create some time for myself just to kind of go in and like visualize, almost kind of clearing my aura, my energy.
Yeah.
Because I definitely feel like that type of stuff, if you just let it kind of sit there, it compiles, and it can definitely, like, there have been moments when I haven't had chances to do that, when I've just kind of let it all add on. And the outcome to that is I start feeling, like really moody, or I can't sleep. I feel stressed. Even my attitude towards other people, I'm not able to be as like patient, hear them out. I find myself like cutting them off. So these are things obviously that you want to avoid doing, because no one deserves to be treated that way. And so I definitely try to create that separation, cleansing. There's also crystals that can get involved. And yeah, lately I've been trying a lot more of connecting with the plants in my garden, or like the trees in my front and backyard, and just trying to use their energy to help me ground and kind of create that separation of whatever it is that's stuck there. Like, remove it from me and send it somewhere else. Don't even send it back to whoever it came from. Just send it up in the ether and let it go where it needs to go.
Yeah. What do you think about avoiding the news in order to protect one's energy?
Okay. Yes, this is a phenomenon that I have noticed personally. And I think it definitely comes first from a place of privilege, where you are able to ignore certain things because you think they don't apply to you. I think the approach could be modified. You don't have to ignore things in the news or things that you deem are negative from the news. Paying attention does not mean that you are
getting sucked into hell.
Yeah. Doesn't mean that you're less spiritual if you pay attention to the news. I think quite the opposite. Paying attention helps you understand what's going on. And if you have, we all have gifts, right? Whatever your gifts are, if you have them and you're paying attention, then that means you're aware of who needs an extra hand. Definitely, it's just because you're spiritual doesn't mean you have to ignore what's going on in the real world, I guess. And it's helpful. Like, we need people who can help. We need them to pay attention because we need their help. And so how can you send your love and your light, or whatever it is that you want to send, if you don't even know who you're sending it to?
Who needs it?
Yeah, exactly. Or alternatively, sometimes I see a lot of like discussions about like ancestors and indigenous people, and that, we work with them, which is true. We work with them on a daily basis. But again, like, we have to pay attention to what's going on, because the issues that are happening, the issues that are happening, period, in the world pertaining to like harm to humans, this is all relevant. It's not like a brand new thing that started in 2025. There is like hundreds of years of history where these patterns have been going on since, the beginning. And so to me, it's almost like you need to honor who you say you work with, or who you say guides you. You honor them by acknowledging their descendants, right? And you do that by simply paying attention, by understanding what their plight is and understanding where they're coming from. It's not, for example, in the immigration context, it's not just, oh, they just wanted to break the law and come here. No, like, there are underlying reasons why, and there's history, both ancestral history, there's political history that causes migration. And so basically paying attention to all this stuff is what helps you, I think, more effectively share that spirituality, share that love, that light. Because otherwise, it's, to me, it's almost like you're just paying lip service, and you're just saying these things outwardly, but on the inside, there's still that separation. And like how, I don't know. I don't understand how that would.
Yeah, you're sort of just like being spiritual in a vacuum.
Right. Yeah.
But we came here for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It also makes, when you're talking, it kind of made me think of the fact that it's hard to say this without like chuckling a little bit, but it's like every freaking time I telepathically communicate with a random animal, it's always all is one. We are one. All is one. They're always saying some form of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, they know.
Right.
the trees know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you are me, I am you, we are them, all is one.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, what you mentioned kind of reminds me of when people, it jumps into a separate issue where people might say like, oh, well, see, I don't see color. I don't see color. Everyone is one. And that's not necessarily what that means. And I think that also tends to happen. And so to me, what all is one means that there's an acknowledgement. Like when you hear things like, I see no color, with that comes like implicitly you're ignoring things. Like, I'm blind to certain things.
Yeah, maybe if we didn't live in a racist society,
right,
maybe we could get away with saying that.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah,
we should see color.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, being all is one comes with a recognition of like an acknowledgement, a recognition of differences. Yes, we are all as one, but they're also like, there's history that's happened, and if you don't acknowledge that, then you're really not acknowledging how we're all one. So yeah, that's something I've noticed. That kind of comes with that, and it becomes like a scary topic in the spiritual world. Like, I don't want to be canceled, But
wait, what becomes a scary topic? What becomes cancel worthy?
Yeah, so like this notion of like, if you either you say, I see no color, you're of that type of mentality, I see no color, or you completely ignore it, like you turn off the news, right? And I think some of that comes from like a fear of being canceled, or like saying the wrong things, or like, oh, well, I'm white, I don't want to take up space, right? That's what I've been told I shouldn't do. And I feel like that's almost like a defensive tactic to that type of request of like inclusivity. It's not that you're being asked to completely ignore or walk away from, whatever the conversation is, but you're being asked to acknowledge, what's happened in the past, what's currently happening, and how these things affect what happens in the future. And so I think from my perspective, I've seen that in spirituality, where a lot of times we want to ignore what's going on because of that. Like, we don't even want to talk about it because that's a sticky topic. Let's talk about, plant medicine or guides or stuff like that. And it's like, well, where do you think these things came from? Plant medicine, there's a very rich history there that comes from people of color. It comes from, individuals from other parts. It didn't happen just in the United States. It didn't arise in the United States. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
In terms of like connection, like trying to increase my connection with like nature and what's going on outside versus everything inside and on my computer all day, I've found that it helps me in terms of like sleep and dreams. I've always found myself to be like a big time dreamer. In some cases, like almost like prophetic type of dreaming. Nothing major, but like just in my own life, where I'll dream someone comes into my office and they're saying certain things to me, and then the next day that happens, stuff like that, or like those deja vu dreams that they call them, where you're like, you have no idea where you're at, and then many years down the line, you're like, wow, I've been here before, or I've met this person before. I definitely, throughout my life, I found that is the case for me. And when I when I am in touch more actively with like the natural world, I find that my dreams are really like, they're so vivid. They tell me things, and it feels like I'm not sleeping, like I'm working, like I'm doing things, I'm clearing things. I don't know. It's very weird, but at the same time, it's awesome. Because it's like I'm working, but I'm not actually working. I'm sleeping, and someone's doing the work for me. That's what it feels like sometimes when I wake up and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm refreshed. Yeah. Thanks, spiritual, whatever, whoever that was. Thank you for doing that work for me and helping me clear.
That's good. That's good. That does sound like a good prescription for finding a balance between hiding from what's going on and awareness. Like, here's a little antidote for reality is getting in nature and just trying to shine your light brighter.
Right. Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right. Do you have any closing statements?
Closing statements, Your Honor, I would like to say, no, I think one thing I would really want people to know in terms of like this mix of like spirituality and the real world is that we all put in our part, right? Like we each contribute. I contribute in my way, Suki, you're doing it in your way, and so on and so forth. And there's no like one, like one person, one thing, one approach that is the be all end all, if you feel like you're not doing enough or wow, you compare yourself to other people, that I think that's the wrong approach. You do your part, what is most effective first for yourself. And by doing that, I've always had this sense that by working on myself, by improving my own, approach to spirituality, I am helping others, even if I'm not like sending them or whatever, offering them a service. Like for me, I don't offer any type of spiritual services, but by working on myself and improving my own practices, like that energy is bound to like jump on someone else, people that I encounter. And so that would just be something that, I see that I would hope people understand. It's not like who's the best. It's not a competition. It's really like we're all workers. We all need to like put in our own time or put in the time to really share. And by doing that, that's how we like create change.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gracie Johnson.
You're welcome. This podcast is sponsored by Gracie Johnson. Kidding.
I'll take it. I'll take your sponsorship. All right. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to you for sharing your time with us. And we'll talk soon.
My pleasure, Suki. Thank you for having me.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.